What's up, everyone? Online prep coach Oscar here at theprepcoach.com, and wanted to talk about protein folding and actually protein misfolding. I've talked about this for a while, but I wanted to go ahead and actually do a quick mini guide. So this could literally extend to maybe 45, 60 minutes to really get the point across. But I feel like if we just do this little 5 or quick, maybe 10-minute segment, it'll help a lot of people out. You can understand a lot about how we can fix improper protein folding, so what's called misfolding in the literature. So, as I said, we have quite a bit to understand, but we need to make sure first and foremost we understand what we're even talking about. So again, know that what we're talking about is a pretty in-depth topic. It's going to make sense in a second, but I'm very briefly summarizing it literally right there. So if we're looking at protein folding, we are looking at how our body is actually fixing protein-based structures to fold proteins to allow proper function. That's basically as simple as it is. We have two main systems, more of the primary and the acute kind of cascades. Secondary cascade we're not really going to get into because I feel like I have to explain it too much, but the UPR system is something that everyone knows, everyone's very familiar with. That's kind of like the chronic long-term player, whereas this secondary system is more of the acute kind of quick fix on protein folding. So we can attack improper or misfolding from these two different systems. So again, if we understand everything in our body is basically a protein and everything needs to be folded properly to form actual primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structures. So if we understand that, we look in our immune system, in actin myosin, so in skeletal muscle tissue, literally freaking everywhere in our body, there's a protein that needs to be folded properly to allow proper functionality. What that means in the bodybuilding world, because this is a primary example, androgen receptors. Androgen receptors are just glycoproteins. Glycoproteins are literally just proteins that are properly folded together in order to receive transmission and go about their actual genomic and non-genomic cascades. So this is my terrible childlike drawing of 3 strands of protein that are folded together and form a docking mechanism, which is actually what a receptor is. So it's not just 3 proteins, there's a lot more involved in these glycoproteins, but for the sake of this understanding, that's kind of how it works. So improper folding would be whenever one of these is off and all of a sudden we have something like that. An improperly folded receptor, which is now non-functional, needs to be refolded to come back into full fold and fold actual functionality, rather, is probably the best way to say it. So we understand the basics. So that is protein folding summarized in about 2 minutes. If we now look when, essentially, without even reading this, what I find is the easiest way to explain this is improper protein folding. So protein misfolding happens when you're doing everything right, but nothing's working. What does that look like? When fat loss is just not happening, when anabolism just stops, when you're always getting sick all the time, whether it be from a systemic fatigue problem or something else, when autonomics are skewed consistently and constantly from HRV to heart rate to blood glucose to blood pressure to some kind of anxiety PNS-based issue to some SNS-based issues, the list goes on and on here. But essentially, when you know you're doing everything right, lifestyle, training, nutrition, your habits, your sleep, everything is perfectly tuned and you're not getting the results you want. That is always the sure sign that it's a protein misfolding problem. So if we understand what it is, understand when it happens and how to diagnose it, let's look at some other ways to diagnose this. We'll look at actual blood work. So the easiest ways that I found over the years, and keep in mind this is purely anecdotal, but this holds up 1,000% of the time, we will look at uric acid, and then we're looking at the ratios between BUN to creatinine to liver enzymes. Specifically on the liver enzymes, look at these, AST, ALT. Usually people lump them together, but they're completely different. Think of AST, look at the S, that's a actual systemic problem, so more of a transferase problem. ALT, liver-based, hepatic-based, more of a misfolding protein problem. So you can't only take these numbers and not look at anything else. You have to look at everything in correlation. So when you see these numbers are all out of whack, or 2 of the 3 are out of whack, or I've seen some wacky combinations of uric acid, a BUN, and an ALT problem, but no AST and no creatinine level, we are looking at these ratios all together, and you'll see mixed mosh combinations of all the above. But essentially, that's a way to actually confirm if there is a protein misfolding problem going on. So you're probably wondering, obviously, if it can be a massive problem that can stall fat loss, stall anabolism, get us sick, can basically screw with everything and cause us to not progress. One of the classic ways that people can plateau that no one ever talks about is mainly a protein misfolding problem when we plateau. What's the fix? Well, first of all, we have to understand there is a sympathetic and parasympathetic component here, but let's block out that side of things and let's look just at baseline protein folding. This is where TUDCA got all the research with chaperone cells, their interaction, and the ability to properly fold proteins. We look at IP6, which works through a different system, different cascade, but still gets the end result of actual proper protein folding. And then we have some various peptides out there. Something like a growth hormone actually does help in this entire process as well, but it's not just constantly having growth hormone in the background that will keep protein misfolding from going on. So, because again, we're looking at different systems. So mainly we are relying, I mentioned the peptides because in very rare situations we do have to use those, but most of the time we do not. Most of the time it's an IP6 or a TUDCA problem, or rather TUDCA equation. Most of the time, if we could just eliminate everything and make sure you guys have one surefire thing to go from here, if you know you have a protein misfolding problem, go with TUDCA. That's the reason why TUDCA research and, well, the TUDCA research got so popular and why it's such a popular product. Not because of what it does from a liver enzyme side of things, what it actually does with a proper protein folding side of things at the hepatic level and at the systemic level, which can fix things like misfolded androgen receptors, misfolded whatever going on in the immune system. And so now all of a sudden TUDCA becomes a very viable and flexible tool. In order to get the amount of proper protein folding done, we are looking literally as low as a dose as 50, 100 milligrams. No one sells products like that. So in reality, you're looking at probably just dosing it as low as you possibly can. If there is also, so if you have a protein misfolding problem and there is a sympathetic parasympathetic problem where your PNS needs a little bit of work, you are constantly running into ROS production-based problems, so you're getting more of that reactive oxygenation that we don't want, that's when we're gonna pair it with an astaxanthin. And in that environment, we can attenuate a lot of that proton and electron negative-based interaction with the astaxanthin to fix the ROS production problem, and then the TUDCA to fix the protein misfolding problem. Astaxanthin would be dosed as low as possible, a couple milligrams. Literally, you only need 1 milligram. No one sells that type of a product, so as low as possible. And you would pair these first thing upon waking with the meditation as the sun is coming up. So that is the actual quick fix. This is the quick guide and a very mini guide to protein folding and protein misfolding. I hope that a lot of people really watch this video multiple times, take notes, and understand this, because if you are plateauing and you're doing everything right, which I've seen this happen hundreds of times, it's probably a protein misfolding problem.